Did you hear that? That is incredible. An absolutely strong stereo guitar from a mono signal. Welcome one and all to the YouTube channel of Live to Tell. Credit for this tutorial goes to Ryan Earnhardt of the Creative Sound Lab YouTube channel. Ryan's channel came up in my feed and the video he shared was called No More Mono Guitar, a real way to stereoize a source. Basically, he proceeds to get into some in-phase, out-of-phase technical jargon that was very much over my head, but then blew me away by showing how to create real stereo sound that starts with a mono source. This is a stupendous routing trick when you want to have a fuller, wider sound that's in living stereo, but which starts out with something recorded with a signal, like a single microphone or an input source that is going to one track. Now, maybe you've tried creating a stereo guitar sound from a mono source by making a double of your original track, like so. You apply some reductive or opposite EQ plots so that you don't have EQ collisions on, say, one of the tracks. Then you'll shift the pitch and location of the guitar by a nudge or two on the track's timeline. And then you'll pan both tracks, one hard left and the other hard right. Then you end up with something not unlike the following. Now it sounds okay, yeah? But then when you attempt to play it back in mono, it ends up dropping in volume, well, like this. Using a visual meter like Waves Doro, you can actually see the drop in volume when switching from stereo to mono. This is called phase cancellation, and it's annoying as all get out because your mix then becomes a problem as you struggle to find ways of making your stereo recordings mono compatible. And why do you have to do that? Well, maybe you know already, because so many of those stupid little Bluetooth speakers out there are still in mono, or the shopping mall speakers, or some sound systems, or portable devices like your phones and tablets. So many of them are still in mono, and that's why you have to work to make sure your stereo mixes are mono compatible. As we'll get into, there are some great plugins out there that can simulate stereo from off of a mono source, but are they as effective as the routing technique that I'm about to demonstrate and safe to use in your mixes? Toward the back half of this video, we'll do side-by-side comparisons with 3 Stereofire type plugins out there, and then you can judge for yourself what sounds best. Let's get to it, shall we? Ryan Earnhardt's DAW how-to example had me a little confused, but eventually I worked it out. So let's get right into a routing technique to create stereo guitar from a mono source that will work in any DAW, guaranteed. Okay, what I've recorded here is a rockin' little riff. And as you can tell, it's in blah mono. Now, we're not happy with that. We want to make a stereo recording out of that one channel, that one mono recording. How do we do it? Well, first things first, we're going to duplicate the track and the events included. So basically, we've got a duplicate of the top track, and we'll rename this. We'll call it Amp Track 2. And let's play those together. Are we going to have stereo even if we go left and right? Have a listen. No, nothing's changed. So even if we switch left and right, nothing's changed. Now let's do something a little weird. We're going to take the second track and see this little runic symbol here. It's actually a Danish letter pronounced I think I got that right. That's called the phase button or the polarity button. And we're going to engage that on just the second track. And now let's listen to left and right and see if we're happy with the sound. Yeah, we got Well, oh yeah, we got stereo all right, but I see a little button lighting up here called the phase button, which means there's an out of phase problem. That doesn't light up unless there's a problem. Now, how do we know there's a problem? Well, watch what happens when we switch to mono. We're going to play this again, and then I'm going to switch to mono. Ooh. If you're going for the broken speaker effect, there you go. That's how to achieve that. And once again, the phase button is not fooled. You can tell there's a problem. So we're not achieving anything here. Next step is to take this track. Let's mute the first one. And we don't have to solo the other one. It's already soloed. And we're going to bounce that track onto a brand new track. Now we're going to bounce the entire mix. We're going to bounce it in mono. And fast bounce, audible bounce, doesn't matter, I don't think. And once that's done, we now have this track. Well, we can actually get rid of it if we want, because it's now been bounced to the new track. So let's delete it. Now this is still panned hard left, which is great. We're going to pan this hard right, and we're going to listen in stereo, and let's see if we like what we hear. Take this off of mono. We're still getting a problem with the phase button, so let's listen in mono, see what the problem is. Broken speaker effect again. But we'll take this out of mono and then watch what happens when we switch the polarity on the second track that we created. You're not going to believe this. Have a listen. We'll click the phase button off, and now let's have a listen. Isn't that amazing? Oh, wait a second. You're thinking, no, once you switch to mono, it's going to sound awful. Well, I didn't see the phase button light up, warning me that it's out of phase. The polarity seems to be right. Let's prove it. Switch to mono, back and forth. Stereo, mono. Stereo, mono, stereo. Did you hear that and see that? That is incredible. Now we have an absolutely strong stereo guitar from a mono signal. And it works in every situation, especially with distorted guitars. But you're probably wondering, will it work on a clean guitar setting? Well, it will work with a clean amp sim setting, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you next. Just one more thing before we leave the distorted guitar demonstration. Let's have a look at NewGen's Visualizer 2 and see what's going on here. If I put everything back to the beginning, look what's going on here. It's telling a story. It's saying basically that randomly it's shooting signal left and right, but not at the same time, and that's what's creating the stereo image. If I switch to mono, you'll see how that all just changes in a second. But the volume hardly changes at all. So there you go. Let's try it now on a clean guitar amp setting and see if we get similar results. Alright, so here we have a clean guitar part. As you can tell, it's not in stereo. Just to prove that, we'll hit the mono button here. And you can see from the signal here, everything is in mono. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, and rather than show you the whole process all over again, well, maybe I will. Let's go through it again just to be sure so that you get the idea. So we're going to take this track, we're going to reproduce it, make an exact duplicate of it, we're going to mute the original, going to take the second track, turn it out of phase, bounce it down, bounce it into mono. There we go. Okay, and now we can actually delete the second track. We don't need that. Grab that. And the last thing we do is pan this one left, unmute it, of course, pan this one fully right, but we're not done yet because we have to put this now out of phase. So let's do that, and we'll start in mono and see if the clean guitar part sounds stereo when we flip into stereo from the mono switch. Hold on, here we go. I'm getting digital overs here, so let's bring down the volume so that it's not obnoxious. How about there? Back to the beginning in mono to start, and I'll tell you when we're flipping to stereo. Stereo. Yeah, we are getting something there, but I'm noticing it's a little right biased. So let's try and get the meters in sync with each other and a more closer representation of balance. That looks about right. I'm going to bring the volume back up on everything. And once again, let's have a listen. And in mono. And in stereo. Nothing is out of phase, as you can tell. Back to stereo. Well, what did you think? Did you think it was a bit more subtle? I did. I think it was a bit more of a subtle effect that you were getting. Not as noticeable as when you're doing this duplication and routing trick on the distorted type sound of a guitar. But can we make this a little bit more stereo and still not lose phase or still not get out of phase issues? Yes, we can. We have to be careful how much we do it though, because distortion will get introduced. I've got a plug-in here called Sideminder. I'm going to engage it. And Sideminder is going to add a little bit of natural stereo. Well, what it does, it takes a stereo signal and just makes it more stereo. And you can take it up to 200%, or you can take it halfway. Let's start with pretty much nothing, and we're going to just introduce a little bit more stereo. And I will hit the mono button so that we can see if it's going out of phase or not. This will also light up if it's going out of phase. So let's give it a shot and see what we come up with. Let's widen it up a bit. Well, that's kind of nice. Still nothing out of phase. And in mono, back to stereo. That's pretty good. Let's see how far we can go. Now, the farther you go, especially on a distorted guitar, you will add more distortion. I don't hear it so much on a cleaner guitar part, but let's push it nearly up to 200% and hear the difference between mono and stereo. That's stereo and mono. Back to stereo. Well, there it is. The beauty, once again, of this trick is that the guitar is not going out of phase. And you get this great stereo image that will sit perfectly in a mono mix. Just absolutely great on all sorts of speakers. Well, I guess from here, the best next step is to do a comparison. Is this routing trick worth the sound and effort and all of that? Or are we going to hear a better result using a mono to stereo simulation from a plugin? Let's have a listen and do a side by side. As promised, I've got a comparison set up here for you to evaluate using 3 of the better mono to stereo plugins out there, based on my estimation anyway, to see if you prefer what they do to a mono signal or if you prefer the stereo guitar sound we created just a few minutes ago using that routing trick. Okay, so above is the first guitar. As you can see, I've named it Mono to Stereo via Routing Trick. Let's hear it again just to remind ourselves how good it sounds. And in mono. Okay, that's about all you need. You get the idea. And now let's get straight to the comparisons. By the way, these two tools are helping us really hear what's going on, well, see what's going on and hear what's going on. Just switching to mono using this modified Mix Checker Pro, and Doro Stereo is serving to let us hear and see the volume changes that are occurring when we switch from mono to stereo. So let's switch over to the first plugin. It's set to the default, well, we're going to set it to the default 100%. And listen to that. There are no presets on that, by the way. We're just going to listen to it as is. And in mono. And now the guitar above. Okay, that was BX Stereo Maker. Now, that was a pretty, it sounded balanced when you're going from stereo to mono, so I thought that was interesting. But if we push it, like, let's give it, let's say 177%, you're going to watch over here, and Doro will show you that you're losing volume the minute you switch to mono. It's a weird thing to witness, but it happens. It sounds really stereo. But look at the volume drop. And the routed guitar. That gives you an idea what's going on. So let's move on to the next one. NewGen is the company. The plugin is called NewGen Stereoizer. They claim that they can achieve stereo properly by going from mono to stereo without affecting the summing of stereo to mono, which means the volume as it takes over. So let's see what happens. Let's see if that they're true to their word here, and we're going to listen to it in stereo first. Mono. The one up top. That was the default setting. They do have a few presets. If we go to electric guitar, we'll just spend a second or two on that. And let's have a listen. Once again in stereo. The routed guitar. Mono. And we're going to go to the next one, which is the Has2 effect. Now, this one is actually by a company called Clevegrand, I think. This one is doing something that reproduces a mono to stereo effect by playing with the EQ. You can actually see what's going on here. If we've set it to electric guitar 1, you can see that it's choosing 600 hertz, for example, to pull to the right. That's what the little R represents there. But that means there's no 600 hertz going to the left at all. In fact, a deficit of them. And then it does for this other set of frequencies, probably 800 or thereabouts. It's pushing those to the left, and so on and so forth. And by doing this, you'll hear that when you switch from stereo to mono, you lose nothing, which is brilliant. But is it as good as the routed guitar that we have at the top? Let's have a listen, and we'll switch from stereo to mono. And in mono. And up top. And that's probably enough of that. And let's pick another setting, electric guitar 2. It's doing a little bit more. It's pulling more frequencies left and more frequencies right. Let's see if that sounds any good. And in mono, watch again here. And up top, the routed guitar. And one more setting on this I think you'd like to hear maybe is the natural setting. Stereo width, natural. And that's an interesting choice for EQ to play around with. Let's hear what it sounds like. Mono, stereo, up above. And there you have it. So those were the 3 plugins that simulate stereo from a mono signal. What did you think? One of them's bound to sound better than the other to you, so put it in the comments below and cast your vote. My personal opinion is I think BX Stereo Maker is the most authentic sounding out of the 3 of them. And second in line is the setting here, natural width, for the Haas 2 effect or plugin. So let's go on to distorted guitars. I think you're going to notice something really interesting when we do this. Alright, here we are with the distorted guitar. Let's remember what that sounded like once we did our routing trick. Stereo. Mono. Stereo. Pretty nice difference between those two. I find it personally quite amazing. But let's see if the simulators, the VST mono to stereo VSTs, can pull it off. Let's see if they can do what they were doing before. So let's switch to the BX Stereo Maker. Again, it's set at the default position. And make sure it's in stereo. Let's have a listen. Mono. Keep your eyes on this. Hope that was enough of a listen for you. Okay, moving on. We're going to do the new gens stereo imager and stereoizer, sorry. And we'll pick and start with the electric guitar setting, but we'll try a couple more after that just to see if it can pull it off. Here we go. In Glorious Stereo. Mono. Stereo. Another electric guitar setting. Let's compare it with the routed one. In mono. And let's listen to the default setting that is on New Gen just for a few seconds. And I'm not going to go to the mono. We're just going to listen to the stereo. Okay, and lastly, we're going to go to the Haas 2 effect by Club Grand and see how that sounds. What have I got set for the default here? Let's start with stereo natural width. Mono. Back to stereo. And with the above. Let's make sure we hear another preset there. Electric guitar 1. in mono, stereo. And the last preset we might as well try is electric guitar 2. Well, what did you think of the distorted guitar comparison? What was your favorite? Why don't you put that in the comments down below and tell me if any of the stereo, mono to stereo VST simulators did the job for you? Did it do the trick? Did it show up well on the mono monitor there, Waves Doro, or did it drop in volume? My personal favorite, nothing can beat what we did with the routing trick. There's just something warm and centered and yet wide about it. It's really amazing. But I would have to say, second to that, BX Stereo. Hold on. Yeah, BX Stereo would be my favorite coming in there. Okay, so there you go. Next thing we might experiment with down the road on the next video is how do we do this trick effectively with acoustic guitars or voice? I'll tell you right now, I have tried it. It's not as noticeable. It's very subtle, but there are some tweaks we can do that make it stand out and yet still sound centered and wide all at the same time. Hope this video was educational for you, helped you decide on how to either mix your guitar differently if you recorded it in mono, or what plugin to try out to see if you can simulate the same thing. And that's it for now. All comments are welcome, so please subscribe and look for the next video. We will be releasing an album, by the way, in the coming year. You might want to enjoy hearing how my years of mixing and mastering have turned out in that regard. But until then, happy mixing, folks. And for Live to Tell, I'm Martin Douglas. Catch you later.